Hi, I'm Nanci Bell. For 35 years, Lindamood-Bell has conducted research and helped thousands of individuals overcome learning challenges. Now we want to help individuals overcome the learning challenges created by the pandemic. In the next few minutes, it's just you and me. I'm going to teach you what we can do together to make a difference. First of all, Stanford Study finds reading skills among young students stalled during the pandemic. This is a study that's important for us to know as we go through this webinar together. Results from a nationwide reading assessment show that the students' development of oral reading fluency largely stopped in spring 2020 after the abrupt school closures brought on by COVID-19. This is a direct quote. It seems that these students, in general, didn't develop any reading skills during the spring. Growth stalled when schooling was interrupted and remained stagnant through the summer. So what can we do about it? My whole conversation with you is about intensive sensory cognitive instruction. We can conquer learning loss and improve basic skills in a few weeks, literally, with intensive instruction, which is 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. The results are significant if the instruction is targeted to develop sensory cognitive processing as a foundation for language and literacy skills. And I'm going to teach you what those sensory cognitive functions are. But first, this is something that was sent to me and means a lot to me as it's representative of the students that we've worked with. This is a young man named Bubba. He says, "Thank you for creating Lindamood-Bell. Hi, my name is Christian, but I like to be called Bubba. I studied in the Berkeley Center, that's our Lindamood-Bell Center in Berkeley, California, and they have been helping me in visualizing and verbalizing right now, and I have only been here for 2 months. When I first came in, I was reading at a 2.8 reading level, and now I'm reading at a 6th grade level." Bubba's gains, I put this slide in here because I want you to know that Bubba's gains in basic skills represent typical gains after weeks of intensive instruction. So I'm going to show you some actual graphs of students that we worked with here. This is for our decoding only students, and this is an N of 8,698. As you look at these, you'll see that these are all in percentiles to make sure that we're on the same page. To make sure we're on the same page and interpreting those percentiles, first percentile to 99th and 50 in the middle, 75th percentile to the 25th percentile is considered normal range. You'll see, if you're looking at symbol imagery, phoneme awareness, and I'm going to explain symbol imagery to you shortly, these are word attack scores, this is word recognition, this is comprehension. These students all came in, except in comprehension, they were fairly low. And you can see that in symbol imagery and phoneme awareness, they definitely got within the average range or normal range, but also, this is important for you to know, their word attack skills improved from the 16th to the 47th, the word recognition from the 25th to the 47th, and look how with these skills improved, look how their comprehension improved. Now, I want to share with you something that we're extremely pleased with, and that is we took a look at the students that came to us with a prior diagnosis of dyslexia, and in a relatively short period of time, again, 119 hours, 120 hours, it's about, 5 or 6 weeks with us, 4 hours a day. These students went, you can hear symbol imagery and phoneme awareness, you can look at those gains, but look over here. Word attack skills went from the 12th percentile to the 42nd. Word recognition went from the 19th percentile to the 39th. They no longer would qualify as for a diagnosis of dyslexia. Now we're going to turn the page and look at comprehension only students, those students that really only had difficulty with comprehension. So if you look here at their incoming scores, their vocabulary was at the 37th percentile. Now remember, I said only problems with comprehension. These students could all decode at or above their grade level. You can see that even with good vocabulary, their ability to comprehend was not at the same level. This is an astounding gain from below the normal range to definitely within the normal range for comprehension. But look at this next slide. These students are what I call in the severe category. They had coming in reading comprehension scores at the 8th percentile, which means that they were really struggling to in any way comprehend or remember what they'd read. And after 100 hours of instruction, they went to the 47th percentile. Again, I want to point out to you, even though some people will think that if you have good vocabulary, you should be able to comprehend, these students all had vocabulary within the normal range, yet their comprehension was not within the normal range at all. They were in real trouble. So, what did we do? What are the sensory cognitive functions that we talked about early on? And I'm going to explain those to you in just a second, but I wanted you to see what Pat Lindamood said years ago. The brain can only receive information from our senses, and it is a multisensory organ. Now, if you think about that, we tend not to look at students or individuals as processing sensory information, but in fact that is the only thing that the brain can process. So what I'm going to talk to you about are the sensory cognitive functions that the brain has to process in order to be successful with all learning. The most important thing today is that the sensory input, remember what Pat said about the brain can only process information from the senses. It is the sensory input of imagery, as we walked through 35 years of researching and experiencing success doing this, or not as much success doing that, as we walked through, wrote programs, walked through these years of what makes a difference for students. We determined that imagery is a primary sensory cognitive function. And we learned that experience in instruction aligned with a general theory of cognition, which is from Alan Pavio. It's called dual coding theory. Pavio said cognition is proportional. Cognition, let me say it again, is proportional to the extent that the coding mechanisms of imagery and language are integrated. There are two types of imagery. Parts and wholes. Symbol imagery is imagery for sounds and letters within words. Parts. Concept imagery is imaging a gestalt or a whole. Let's look a little bit closer at symbol imagery. Phonological and orthographic imagery for reading and spelling words. This is related to word attack, word recognition, and paragraph reading accuracy. I'll say it this way. Let me say contextual reading. And I'll say contextual decoding. If you have weakness in symbol imagery, then you're going to have weakness, you're going to experience weakness in word attack, word recognition, certainly orthographic and phonological awareness. But also, if you have difficulty with symbol imagery, you might experience difficulty memorizing sight words. And if you don't have enough sight words memorized, then when you're reading in context, this is what happens to a lot of students. They are forced to guess at a word because they either can't sound it out fast enough or they don't have it memorized. And so one of the bullets that I put here was this one, contextual reading, where you're guessing rather than rapid, accurate decoding. Now here's the problem. The only reason to read is to comprehend. And if you are in a situation as a student where you have to guess at words, that impacts your ability to comprehend. You can comprehend. If you read the word wrong, you're going to not have a good understanding of what you've read or be able to remember it. Now, the other side of the imagery coin is concept imagery, and that's the imaged Gestalt that I was talking to you about. It's not imaging letters, it's imaging concepts. For example, if I read to you, the big black horse ran across the green field with his head held high, his hoofs pounded the ground, and he was running faster and faster. You should be able to make an imaged movie of that in your head if you have good concept imagery. But if you don't, what happens is as you hear the language or you read the language, you essentially process bits and pieces, some random facts. So I've written parts down there if you can read that. Now, if the only reason to read is to comprehend, then if you've only processed a few parts, or the only reason to listen to language is to comprehend, then that is going to negatively impact your ability to think critically. So this processing of parts will impact your ability to get a main idea, etc. So what I'm showing you here is that as the oral language comes in and the written language comes in, we can teach you how to create an imaged Gestalt. And that imagery is what stops language from going in one ear and out the other and processing only parts. Once that imaged Gestalt is established or developing, then we can teach you how to draw a conclusion, get the main idea, make an inference, predict and extend. Those are called higher order thinking skills, HOTS. And you can apply that to all schoolwork. But if you don't, for the students that we see that have weakness in concept imagery, they will experience weakness not only in oral and written language comprehension and critical thinking, but they'll also experience weakness in problem solving and following directions, things that are very important for success in school. Now, let's put those sensory cognitive functions into the component parts of reading. For example, reading is not just reading. Reading means having the ability to sound out a word or recognize a word or read in context. And obviously be able to comprehend what you read. So I think of these as these interior circles, this is a Venn diagram, as subsets of the greater set of being able to comprehend. Now, underneath those sets, those component parts, are these sensory cognitive functions. For example, obviously concept imagery, I'll put CA for concept imagery, is going to impact your ability to, you need that in order to be able to comprehend, as I had just got through saying to you. But also, if you look at these, symbol imagery, along with phonological awareness, symbol imagery underlies all of these subsets. So now let me bring it all together for you, and then we're nearly done. Imagery in the language processing spectrum is what this is showing you, that symbol imagery weakness in symbol imagery would cause you weakness in decoding, weakness in concept imagery can cause weakness in comprehension, and sometimes that these could be labeled dyslexia if it's severe enough, or it can be labeled hyperlexia or autism if it's really severe. It's important for you to know that we see students that are just like I'm going to show you in a minute, Buzz, and we see students that are just like Natalie. But sometimes we see students have a little bit of both of these issues, or more on one side and more on the other. So let's take a look at Buzz. Here's the Venn diagram up in the corner. You can look at this with me. Buzz has vocabulary at the 75th percentile. So if you're thinking about those percentiles again, then you see that he is above the normal range. However, if you look down here, and we'll skip over word attack and skip over this and this for a second. But if you look down here, Buzz is not comprehending at that same vocabulary level, but it's not because he has difficulty with concept imagery. In fact, his issue is that he can't decode. His reading in paragraphs is at the 25th percentile. His fluency is at the 16th percentile. So you can see that his symbol imagery weakness is impacting his ability to comprehend. Now, you'll see kind of an outlier here. Buzz he was a student that we worked with. He had word attack skills at the 95th percentile, but that's because he had done some phonological programs that had developed his word attack skills, yet he couldn't memorize sight words. His symbol imagery was significantly low when we worked with him. So while his word attack skills were high, 95th percentile, his word recognition skills were only the 37th percentile, and his reading in context was the 25th percentile. And it was only after we developed his symbol imagery that he was able to function at a level commensurate with his potential. And Buzz is a student that went on to graduate from college. The polar opposite of Buzz is Natalie, and she again was a student that we worked with. Look at Natalie's scores. Her vocabulary 86th, her word attack 86th, her word recognition 85th, her reading rate 84th, her reading accuracy 95th, her fluency 95th. So if I put them all in here, these are all significant strengths for her. Yet look at her comprehension. She's a classic student that has difficulty only with concept imagery. Hated school and was sick before she went to school every single day. And we also worked with her, and she graduated from college. So, what can you do as you're listening to this, and what can you do to make a difference? What should you start with? How can we conquer this learning loss? The first thing is a learning ability evaluation to determine strengths and weaknesses. All of us have that in our life. Unfortunately, we have strengths and weaknesses in our life, but strengths and weaknesses in learning can impact you significantly in terms of your success or moving on through school. So our learning ability evaluation is 4 hours. We use standardized assessments, and there's an hour consultation. And you can see it, what it says on the screen there. This is a principal that often referred students to us for a learning ability evaluation. And she said, and I always loved this, it's like getting a fingerprint of your child's unique learning profile. After that, the second thing to be done is do the appropriate intensive intervention. So you have to make the diagnosis accurately. And that is 1-to-1, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day for this intensive instruction. Here's what the instruction looks like. It's a little bit different, obviously, for different types of imagery. What we're trying to do as in this instruction is to use language that consciously brings imagery, trying to use language that brings the imagery to consciousness. So I'm asking Buzz, what letters did you picture for IP? And he's not seeing the letters in front of him. He's using his symbol imagery to answer my question. I'm developing his orthographic memory here. What was the second letter you saw in a word like east? But if I switch gears now to concept imagery, I have to change what my language has to change to develop, to bring imagery to a conscious level. So I can't ask Natalie, what letters do you picture? Because I know from my diagnostic testing that she does picture letters. So I don't want to waste her time and my time. Instead, I have to ask her a question that will stimulate her concept imagery. So I say, what do those words make you picture? And she's starting to call up her imagery. We start with picturing just a word, then going to a sentence, and then going to sentence by sentence, and then paragraph by paragraph. You can read that. And as we get in here, we're starting to apply that to higher order thinking skills. Let me take you back in what a parent said about her daughter that went through symbol imagery instruction. In the 9 weeks that she was here part-time, my child went from not recognizing a single sight word to reading me a book at the 2nd grade level. And this is what a mother said about her daughter after she went through visualizing and verbalizing to develop her concept imagery. The daughter that I see now loves to read. Lindamood-Bell was able to provide the right setting, instructors, and resources to aid her in her comprehension deficit and build her self-esteem that was robbed by years of wrong placement and diagnosis. So to summarize, this is symbol imagery, this is concept imagery, and if you're thinking of those, of the reading parts, I call it the reading circles, you can see that we can develop all of these if we have the right diagnosis based on the learning ability evaluation. I included this because I always loved it. My daughter entered the program hating to read. I sometimes catch her at 2 a.m. reading under her covers. And I even took a book away as punishment once. So that is a huge change. The last thing that I want to say to you is that if we measure learning ability, differentiate the diagnosis, not think that one size fits all, and if we provide instruction to develop the sensory cognitive function of imagery, students can make not only significant gains in reading in weeks of instruction, but we can conquer learning loss and help students experience more success in school next year. Thank you very much. I'm glad you were with me. And I think together we have a chance to overcome some of the challenges that the pandemic caused. You will be able to have your questions answered, so please call or go to our website because you can see more of our research with universities. Thank you.